Okay, I'm going to call to order this work session of the Larimer County Board of Commissioners. Today is Monday, August 26, 2019. This is our weekly community development work session with Lori Cadrich, our Interim Director of Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources. I'm Tom Donnelly. I'm the Chairman of the Board of County Commissioners this year, joined by John Cafalas, Commissioner from District 1, Steve Johnson, Commissioner from District 2, and Linda Hoffman, our County Manager, is here at the controls, the brand new controls.
And they amplify.
I know, they're amplifying now, yeah. So, great. Lori, so why don't you kick it off and let's get going.
Thank you, Commissioner Donnelly. Our first item is a follow-up from the hearing last week on oil and gas. And during that hearing, you received a letter from a group of citizens that was signed by a number of folks as well as a number of groups. And so as we got back together and debriefed as a staff team, we thought that it would be a good idea to check back in with the board to see how you wanted to handle the request made by the group that was here previously, to give you an update on where we're currently at with the task force and seek any guidance that you might have about any changes of course or any ideas that we have. And the letter is from the Larimer Alliance organization. And the first request that they had for you, of course, the most significant one, right, is that until such time that the COGCC finalizes its own statewide rules, we ask that you suspend all pending and future oil and gas permits in Larimer County. And I believe that some of the previous testimony, at least in the few months I've been here, has also suggested a moratorium in absence of this. And as I recall, it has not been the board's desire to move in that direction, but I did want to confirm that or not.
Yeah, that's correct. And I just, since we're talking about emails that we received an email this morning from an individual opposed to a moratorium as well. And I just have a question. I've heard two different things about a pending application, whether that would go through the 24 criteria in the legislation. I think, Matt, you told us it would. So if there was an application pending with COGCC, that the commission would review it against those criteria that were spelled out in the legislation. And then somebody else, I think maybe one of the letters or emails or citizens told me that it would not. It would only be new applications. Do you know for sure?
For sure. Anything
Okay.
that was in the process of, as of I believe it was April 19th when the legislation passed, anything that was in process was subject to the director's review criteria, or that was that additional, I think it's 16 criteria.
Okay, 16, yeah, okay. That was kind of the basis of my decision of not suspending applications or our consideration of those applications, because we don't have any criteria in addition to those in the legislation, so I'm not sure how we would judge them any differently than the scrutiny they would receive by the COGCC. That was the basis of my position.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson, Matt. So, you know, when we've had this conversation before, my position has been that we ought to review the pending applications based on the 16 objective review criteria. In light of that, could you once again help us to understand what are the pros and cons of, rather than just sending it off to the state to run through their process, if we decided to do our own process based on those criteria? What are the pros and cons of that? I mean, what would be the benefits to our county, to our communities, and what might be the downside, perhaps?
Matt, if I might just ask a question before you answer that. The way that I remember this happening before is that we could, as a county, still provide input related to the 16 criteria that's on there. Is that still the process that's going to be followed?
So when 19181 was adopted, not only was that criteria created for the director to provide decisions upon, and meaning the director of COGCC, one thing they said was that the only way that local government could make comment on an oil and gas application was during the preview process at the very beginning of the process. You were allowed to make comment and review the application. We're allowed to make comment at any time during the process now. So while we don't weigh or judge these applications against that 16 criteria, we can look at them and make judgment on them, and then if there was a reason to bring it to you for concern, let's say that they were too close to a school. And
Or a water supply, for example.
or a water supply, I could bring that. The COGCC, I've asked them to notify me before they issue any new permits or any of the existing permits in process. And so they're on notice to notify me, and if I felt that there was a criteria that wasn't being met, I would elevate it up to you. More than likely, I'm going to elevate any of them that they propose to issue up to you guys before we send a decision on to them that we're okay with it.
What's involved in terms of staff capacity if I mean, that's what I've been asking for, is that, we provide some level of additional scrutiny based on those criteria. But if, for example, when that permit application comes to the county and we look at the criteria, you said that, Matt, and then determine maybe criteria this or that is not being met, does that mean that you're doing some kind of a careful analysis, or how do you make a decision or an opinion that the objective criterion related to, let's say, distance from a water supply, that's not being met? Does that require a lot of analysis to make that determination and then offer that information to the state folks?
Not normally, because most of that information comes to us directly from the COGCC.
Comes to what?
Not normally, because most of that information comes directly to us from the COGCC via their GIS mapping tools and other things. So as much as I can use our GIS tools, I use theirs. I go out, I look at maps and understand what's going on with them. Right now, as I've said, we've got 5 pending sites, maybe 6 in Larimer County total, and they've been in process for a little bit over 9 months to a year. So we've seen them. We know that they're out there. There's concerns over the one mostly at the southern end of Loveland, and that's a citizen concern, and as well as some of the concerns we had of its proximity to a floodplain and potential groundwater or surface water resources. And so if that ever comes to the surface, we'll certainly be bringing that forward to talk to you about.
Thank you, Matt. This is helpful, and I don't mean to belabor, but at this point, since the direction you have from the commissioners is not to look at those 5 permit applications and compare them to the criteria, and then if you see something that needs to be flagged, to offer that information to the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, you haven't gotten that direction. So therefore, you're not really looking at these things in terms of you're just trusting that the state will.
No, I look at them.
Okay.
I look at them based upon those criteria and based upon the information available to me, and but right now, out of the 6,000 permits that are in the state being issued, those are so far down on the list, nothing's coming up on them. The state isn't in the posture to approve a lot of those right at this point. Bunker 8 was the first one that came forward to us, and that was in a request from the provider and not from the state. So the state's still not issuing that until they're prepared to issue that one for them.
And John, I wasn't suggesting that we not comment on concerns that we have. We traditionally have done that in the past. There were ones over at
Windsor?
Timnath near the elementary school. We've always commented on those. And I think when John mentioned water source, I believe one of the well permits is northeast a little bit, north and northeast of Fort Collins. It's very near a water supply that would probably be good for you to look at. And if you believe that there's concern there, I would expect you to bring that to the board.
Sure.
I was just suggesting that I'm not in favor of suspending any. I believe the legislation gives us the opportunity to suspend review of pending applications, was the implication from the materials I read, or we have the ability to adopt some type of a moratorium while we develop regulations. And Those are the two things that I'm not in favor of, but I'm not in favor of giving up our local government right to comment on pending applications, which we have had for years.
Thank you. That's helpful, and I thank you for giving us this time. If it's clear that staff has the ability to look at the various permit applications, and if they determine that there are some criteria that are not being met, then they have the ability to, either in writing or however it's done, to inform the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission that we believe this criterion has not been met.
I agree with that.
Then that's something I want to make sure we get that on the record, because I think that gets me to a better place with providing a little bit more scrutiny for some of these things as we look at our regulations and as the state looks at its regulations.
Commissioner, may I just ask a clarifying question on that?
Thought we had made it really
Well, we
As long
keep
as you don't make it
talking
worse.
about the 16, and one of the 16 criteria is oil and gas locations within a municipality. And I would assume that you would want us to be looking in the unincorporated areas and leave the jurisdiction of the municipality to the municipalities, but I want to confirm that since we've used the 16.
So make it 15.
Is that what makes sense?
Sure.
Because some of them appear to be in the county, but are in like Johnstown or something by virtue of property that's been annexed.
We did, what did we do on that Windsor one? We requested additional time, and Windsor annexed the property where that one well was proposed, remember, to give them time basically to annex, I think. So they could utilize their own land use regulations.
Right. And the one that was closest to Windsor more recently here actually withdrew the Windsor pits, which was closer to the floodplain down there, and they
Yep.
withdrew recently.
And Lori, so that is correct. To clarify, we're looking at the areas that the county has jurisdiction over, but I'm wondering if that also would include the growth management areas. It seems like,
As long as it's unincorporated area.
Right.
Yep.
okay,
And there may be, even with these criteria, there could be both jurisdictions looking at it, because some of the criteria is within 1,500 feet of a municipal boundary. So it could be someplace where both jurisdictions are really reviewing it. But I just wanted to clarify that if it was clearly in a municipal jurisdiction, you wouldn't expect us to pick that one up.
so have we clarified that?
Yes.
Unincorporated, and if it includes GMA, we would review that or look at it, and then if things are a concern or not met, we would offer that information to the state. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
And then,
we kind of operated at that level before that anyways. For instance, when the Kaufman pits came up down south of Loveland, it's really close to Loveland. Loveland came out asking us for help. We didn't provide our own comments, but we utilized the city's comments and said we support the city's comments in these efforts, and we're concerned about those issues as well, and supported them along the way, even though we weren't required to let them participate in our comment period.
Sure. Okay.
okay, the second thing that was requested in the letter was an appointment of a replacement on the task force, and so I wanted Matt to, I'm
Has
sorry.
the lady actually resigned?
That was what I was going to.
She did? Okay.
She did. She moved to Houston to take another position with a school down
With the Houston Oilers.
So there is a vacant position, and if you wanted to look back at the group that was available, we
So
can
how
go
much,
back.
how much of the work has already been done by the task force? And
We're down to probably, Leslie and I'd like to maintain our commitment to finish this in October, November,
so if we
early.
appointed somebody, they'd have to
2 meetings.
review the record, or they would be at an informational
Meetings.
disadvantage.
And all of our
possibly.
proceedings have been recorded,
Well,
video.
I'd like us to appoint someone to, I mean, the suggestion from the advocacy group is someone with a medical background. They offered 4 individuals, so had previously applied. Some of those individuals, or at least one, have been participating in the meetings, so it wouldn't be like we're plucking somebody out of the sky. It seems to me, in terms of being responsive to at least one faction, one constituency, they don't necessarily represent the entire county. That's been clarified. We ought to have someone in there that has some air quality, public health, medical, and of those 4 names, I don't know how we would go about that, if we agree.
We do have people that have air quality and environmental, public health background. Absolutely, we do.
At least 2.
In fact, that one doctor who applied came here and didn't even know what the ozone levels,
Well,
what's
that's not
what's
the
even
person I
happened to ozone levels in the last 10 years. He didn't even have any idea.
And that's not the person I'd recommend.
Okay. But how many members are there on the committee?
15.
And so we're down to 14? Is it problematic to have an even number? That's a big committee anyway.
But one of the issues has been, at least the perception has been, that it's not balanced. And if we're taking off an academic person with expertise in air quality, public health issues, that's not going to help the perception issue. And I think perception is a lot of what we do. And
Yeah.
I think it's important to have someone up there with a medical background or a public health background. And we do have folks on there. I mean, I'm just expressing my opinion.
Yeah, it might be good to look at the pool of applicants we had and see if we can replace somebody with the same perspective as this person that would maintain the balance that we appointed. I'm not at all persuaded that we need a doctor on there.
Was the lady
We already
a
have 2 public health people on there.
climatologist, or what was she? She was a PhD at CSU.
I'd have to go back and look at what exactly she had as credentials, but I think she was studying climate control.
Can you look at the pool of applicants and look at her expertise and see if you think there's anybody, maybe rank the closest people that you think would match?
Yeah.
It makes some sense because we have the 2/3 requirement to pass a recommendation, so it makes sense to keep the same number and keep the same balance.
Okay.
At least to me, I think it's worth us considering if we have somebody close. But
Yeah, I'll
That's
look
what
at
I
the
would
list of
suggest.
applicants and those that have been attending and following the process as best we know.
I mean, we can just leave, I'm not saying I definitely want to fill a vacancy, but I'm open to looking at what's available.
So with
Without
that in
knowing, I
mind,
can't
if
commit.
I may, Mr. Chair, please, if you could look into that. I think the other 3, there were 4 names recommended, medical folks, and I'm sure there are others that applied. If we could come back with some recommendations for the next meeting or the next work session, and then somehow we should try to make a decision if we
When
want
is
to
the next
replace that
meeting?
person.
When
Yeah.
is their next meeting?
The next task force meeting is September 25th, so we have a little
Okay.
bit of time.
Bit of time.
We have
It's
yeah.
just under a month or just about a month, okay. Well, let's at least see what the options are. I would be interested in doing that.
All right. I believe that's all we have for the oil and gas. Anything else, Matt or Frank? Leslie? All right.
I know I probably have 2 quick questions about
And I have
some of
2
the consent items, which I'll ask during the hearing. But maybe I can let you know, just so the staff person might have a chance to look at it. But the boundary line adjustment that moved 10 feet, I read the entire packet, and there was no rationale given on the part of the applicant about why they wanted to make that change. And the other question I had was, I think it was a lot consolidation into 2 lots and a vacation of an easement. And I didn't see in the packet the little checklist that we normally get where all of the utilities sign off. Maybe I'm just missing that. But that's usually something we look at to make sure they've all signed off on it. I think that's a requirement, but we usually see a little signature page from them. And I might have missed that, so maybe, I don't want to pull them off the consent, but if whoever the staff person is can address those 2 things, I'm sure that'll take care of my concerns.
Which one are we talking about?
Well, they're 2 different ones, and I don't remember the names, but I see that, but these guys will know, I think.
This is an expansion of a
It
small.
wasn't that one, I know that.
facility.
It wasn't that one.
Uh,
Amending the
Amend the
common
common
light
line.
is Lakeshore Gardens. And the one about the vacation of the easement is Crystal Lake's 14th filing one.
And in Crystal Lakes, a lot of times we find that a lot of the utilities aren't there. They're
Yeah.
they just
road
planted
and
them.
rec department up there, they manage their own roads and some of that stuff. We might have an electrical utility and that's about
I
it.
think we usually get a REA sign off.
We usually have to take that around and get all the utility providers to sign, don't you?
That
Still have to do the
That would
checklist.
typically service that area.
Yeah.
yes.
And you guys may have it, it may just not have got photocopied, but if you can ask the staff
Yeah.
person, that will help.
We have one other item and then a couple other quick heads-up items as well. So Katie's here, I think, to help give us an update on
Thought we were
the
doing this
kind of.
No, we got two other things.
I didn't mean to go out of order.
So,
Our
sorry, my-
signing
Yes.
process.
Yeah, so this is just a really quick thing, but we wanted to make sure you were aware of it because it might affect your, how your meetings run. And Katie's here to share with you kind of the change in process. Sorry, I just wrote on you. And the conversations we've been having with the county attorneys on this.
So I'm sure as you guys have felt, there's been a little bit of times where we've had backlog on our findings and resolutions coming through. Everyone's very busy and we kind of get behind. So we spoke with Janine about 2 weeks ago and asked if we could actually start producing our own findings and resolutions in our office for all consent items. If at a hearing something were to get pulled from consent and moved to discussion, that findings and resolution would be gone as well, and Janine would then produce it later on. But this gives us an opportunity to help the applicants move forward a little bit more quickly, wrap up cases, be able to start getting building permits and things like that. She did say she'd work with us in order to get templates put in place so that we could make sure everything was good. We would create a process then where we would take it over to her and she would make sure she's okay with the wording, sign it, and then we could have it available either at the hearing for you guys and or if you'd like us to still keep it on a Tuesday meeting.
So part of the motion would be to approve the whatever, and then also approve the findings and resolution.
Yes.
Yeah, so this, I think this is
That's a good
a
idea.
great process improvement for our applicants, and will move things along a little bit more rapidly, so that's positive. And I think the two choices for you really are whether you're willing to stay after the hearing for a few minutes to sign these documents, or we could put them on the following Tuesday
You either sign them
agenda.
you'll either sign them after the ad bid on Tuesday, or you'll sign them after this.
Yeah.
You sign them in somewhere, so
Yeah.
I might as well do it after land use probably.
Is that
Yeah.
okay with the attorney's office? Does that help you, Frank?
Yeah, I think that'll be good. As long as there's no major changes, if there's a bunch of dialogue back and forth and it comes off consent, we'll have to go back and
Then you have to actually go
deal
to the
with it.
regular. Yeah.
But if it's just on consent, we should be able to get it ready ahead of time.
That's a great idea, because that'll give people 2 weeks faster or something, probably. I mean,
It'll probably
Couple
save
weeks.
everybody time.
yeah,
Okay.
maybe a month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll try it out then to have you sign after
Okay.
the hearings, and if for some reason that doesn't work, we can do it at the administrative matters.
Great.
So, okay, good, thanks, Katie. So the other, just two quick heads-up items. We did talk about the agenda already for this afternoon, so I don't think we need to probably go there, but wanted to let you know that, first of all, Sunrise Ranch is starting to move forward on its amended special review process, and so
Good.
that is something that will come to you eventually as a decision. So we want you to be aware in case you're starting to get correspondence or any information about the Arise Festival or anything like that. That's all going to be part of that proposal. So they're going to probably move forward with a neighborhood meeting pretty soon, and then they'll be working with us as staff. So that will come to you probably in a few months if they stay on track with the schedule. So we wanted you to be aware of that. The other item is there's been a fair amount of email correspondence. Oh, go ahead.
Let me just tell you,
Yeah.
my sister was in town, and so we went out to lunch on, like, I don't remember what day it was. It was on this weekend sometime, and we go into this nice El Poblito. It's a great local Mexican restaurant down in Loveland. Lafferty's in there all the time, and I go in there with my sister, and sitting at one of the tables is that guy. What's the white-haired guy? The guy that called me. Remember the guy that called me that one time during the Rise Festival? Remember that guy? And he was sitting in there at a table with a bunch of people, and I was like, oh gosh, can we sit over there? So I didn't talk to him about it. I avoided him, so I didn't find out what he thought about Arise. But we did get a number of positive emails from people that said they attended and also were neighbors.
Yeah,
So
and
I
at this
heard-
point forward, any emails or anything like that we get, we'll bundle as part of your package and the application materials when you review
I
it,
don't
so.
think we had any negative emails yet about it. Have you? Did you not forward them to us?
Well,
Are you sparing our feelings?
Oh, thank
No.
you. Please, they're
I
delicate.
I got some
Oh, you have?
communication. I got some communication from the sheriff, and he indicated that he was going to be coming to the board to provide some feedback from an emergency Services perspective, how they thought it went. And
We'd offer at this point that we work with them as a referral agency and that we take their feedback and we'll roll it in as part of this package that you review.
That would
So,
be more
Did you
appropriate.
get, did you get negative comments? I didn't get
I
it.
did not.
All I got was positive. Yeah.
And the same, I've also received at least a half a dozen emails
They're a form
that have been
letter.
positive. I've wondered whether these emails are self-generated
No,
or
they
perhaps
have the same
people are
language.
being,
They all have the same language, pretty much at the
well,
end.
there was some, yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of formal.
So I'm wondering if they've been prompted by the organizers.
Yeah, but you got negative ones as well?
No, sir.
Oh, I thought you said you did. Oh,
I
I'm
did
sorry.
not. I did
Oh,
not.
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you will
Anyway.
be reaching out to the sheriff's office?
Yes, we've been in communication with them and Katie's talked with them and so we've let them know that we'll capture any feedback they have as part of that referral process and roll it in with the
It
application.
should be a part of that process instead of coming here before a hearing.
Special review hearing.
Okay. The other item is, there's been some email correspondence, so Santanca Cove paddleboard rental lesson place that's been in a conversation for probably about 3 years now, and it came back up again, and I just wanted you to be aware of it, because we have been talking to Natural Resources. I think we do have a plan to move forward and deal with home occupations as part of the land use code. And a couple of you, Commissioner Johnson, got pulled into the conversation, but at this point, we're not seeing
He
that
pulled
there's...
himself in. What are you talking about?
I dive in, I didn't get pulled.
Yeah.
So we're not seeing a code violation on the property. I'm not seeing a reason to reverse or change a decision that was made by my predecessor. And because you've been brought into the conversation, just wanted you to be aware of the conversation. I'll continue to work with the person who's been reaching out to us. But there have been some questions about, do you recollect conversations that were had, back
Or what I have to
before
lunch.
my time? So
Yeah, I don't remember. So it's like somebody operating a rental business out of their home, like over in Steve's neighborhood, right?
But the north end.
Oh, at the north end?
yeah, at the north end of the
Oh,
reservoir.
okay, and so we already have a contractor who's in the park.
A
who rents
concessionaire.
a concessionaire, and so this
Yeah.
guy's just setting up shop right across the street, and so we're concerned that the traffic numbers and things like that are violating the
Yeah,
occupation.
I'd be happy to go into a little bit more of the chronology if that's helpful. I mean, so back in 2016, yeah.
Do you want to do it tonight,
So-
today, or do you guys want to wait till
Yeah,
next week?
I
It's a-
remember it all.
And I'm happy to go through that if you'd like, if you have questions. Mostly, I just wanted to give you a heads up that we're answering questions and responding to that, and see if you had any questions or input that you'd like to give at this point. But because I know it's been a long-standing conversation that predates me, and Linda may recollect some of it, so,
It's after me and before you.
right, exactly.
End of the reservoir?
Satanka Cove, yeah.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, that little, up at the northwest corner of the reservoir, like the west end of Horseshoe Dam.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I think it's well documented. Matt's hearing a lot about rural occupations and home occupations as a section of our code that needs some refining probably. And there's an opportunity in this case to probably clarify things like parking off-site and that sort of situation that is causing some of the kind of friction in this case.
John, go ahead.
Mr. Chair. Leslie, two questions regarding, on different topics, but regarding the wireless communications facilities land use code update. Is it correct that if we have any adjustments or things that we wish to bring to your attention, we have until Wednesday to do that?
Correct.
Thank you. And,
Well, actually, we have longer than that, because we can make an amendment during our hearing in October.
well, I know, but
Yeah.
I mean, as far as,
To get something.
The earlier the better.
Yeah, so
That's
what
what
we,
they're gonna
what
say.
we're planning to do is take all the comments that we get from this last work session, and we'll do another refined draft that will go to the planning commissioners for their public hearing in September. And then they, of course, have the opportunity after the hearing or during the hearing to suggest changes if they'd like to at that point. And then you, the Board of Commissioners, would also have the opportunity at your hearing in October if you'd like to further suggest changes. So the deadline of this week is really just to get changes included in this next draft.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And my last question is
Gas.
regarding the survey that our consultants have made available to provide some preliminary input on the land use code update, the process. is it correct that we have until the end of the month to provide that input?
What's the timing, Matt, for the
What's the actual
consult
date?
survey?
Is
I
it
believe
August
it's
31 or August or
31st
Friday?
For the,
You know the monkey survey thing that they put out there? Do we have until I thought it was the end of the month, August. Does that mean August 31, or does that mean the end of August 31?
No, it's just my Apple.
Great. I look forward to filling out that survey over the Labor Day weekend. Thank you. No, just kidding.
That's where I learned how to fly. But the runway's not great.
Thank you.
Maybe it's old.
okay. Okay.
Okay, what else?
We don't have anything else unless you do.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Anybody have anything else? What happened to the old lady, the old people that flattened all four of their tires running over your spike strip? Do you know? Okay. Good job.
They got new tires, I think.
Good job, dude. Way to go. Okay. Anything else? Shutting down some businesses?
If you drive over those, should you really be driving?
I don't know. Pick up the pace, my friend. All right. Board's adjourned.
Why is Eric here?